Let's take a look at the weekend's auction results. Nationally, there were 1,861 auctions over the previous week, returning a clearance rate of 61.1%. In Sydney, there were 707 auctions with a clearance rate of 60.1%. Melbourne held 708 auctions with a clearance rate of 65.4%. Brisbane held 116 auctions with a clearance rate of 62.9%. Adelaide held 52 auctions with a strong clearance rate there of 86.5%, and the ACT held 59 auctions with a clearance rate of 50.8%. Joining me now is Eleanor Creagh, Senior Economist at REA Group. Eleanor, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
How are clearance rates holding up?
So clearance rates are holding up pretty firm despite the uptick in the number of properties coming to auction. So we've seen a pretty significant uplift in the number of properties coming to market and coming to auction in recent weeks. And actually, this coming week looks set to be even busier than last, with a significant step up in the number of properties coming to auction in this coming weekend relative to last year.
Is it going to be a Super Saturday?
It is looking like it's going to be a Super Saturday in Sydney and Melbourne in particular. Okay. If we look at overall auction volumes, they're set to be close to double this time last year, although we did see last year auction volumes were a little bit lower because of the grand final public holiday and the National Day of Mourning. But in general, the overarching trend is that this spring is shaping up to be a lot busier than last spring.
How long are properties roughly taking to sell at the moment?
So we've seen that, throughout the winter selling period, which is the seasonally quieter time for the property market, that properties have taken a little bit longer to sell. But certainly with the spring selling season having kicked off busily, we're likely to see that trending down a little bit with the spring selling season kicking into full swing over the next few weeks.
What sort of traffic are you getting on the website right now?
So if we look at buyer demand, we are still seeing that buyer demand remains much higher than pre-pandemic levels. And buyer demand is certainly a little bit different when we pan out across the different capital city markets.
Sure.
So if we look at buyer demand per listing in Perth, for example, that actually hit a record high in August. So maybe no surprise there, given the fact that we know that the Perth market is now the top performing capital city market over the past year with respect to annual price growth. But also we're continuing to see that market conditions are remaining more competitive due to the fact that the number of properties listed for sale is still hovering around those record lows. Brisbane and Adelaide markets also remain pretty competitive, with the number of properties listed for sale in those markets also pretty tight relative to prior decade averages, keeping those markets more competitive and buyer demand per listing a little bit higher in those markets as well.
How about property prices generally this year? It looks like it's been a pretty strong year across all of the capital cities, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty interesting observation that we've taken away this year, is that those price falls of 2022 really reversed much sooner and faster than many expected. And we have now seen national home prices moving through their 8th consecutive month of price growth after lifting a further 0.28% in August. Now, if national prices continue to grow at that same pace as they have over the past quarter, they're going to end the year up a little over 5%. So in relative to long-run historical price growth, it's going to be a relatively strong year. And if we look at the other capital city markets, it's going to be a very strong year, or it's shaping up to be a very strong year if that pace of price growth continues in Adelaide and Brisbane in particular, and Perth as well.
How about Sydney? How's Sydney been going?
Sydney as well, if property prices continue to lift at the same pace as they have over the past quarter, they're going to end the year up over 8% in Sydney. So again, another historically strong year relative to long-run average price growth, and really quite remarkable, and I think a testament to the fact that home buying demand is stronger and has remained more resilient, likely buoyed by that resurgent population growth, what are very tight rental markets at the moment, possibly encouraging those with the means to do so, of course, to purchase maybe sooner than they otherwise would have. And for much of this year, that constrained environment with respect to the amount of stock that's available for sale, that's been keeping conditions a little bit more competitive, although we are starting to see that change now.
Eleanor Creagh, Senior Analyst at REA Group, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.